Hi, my name is Nikita Robinson, and I will be doing a presentation on interpersonal communication for HSCO 508. So we'll go ahead and go to that first slide. First off, I identified an overarching goal for my life. That goal is to communicate and give information to others in such a way that it is easy to receive, and while asking thought-invoking questions that would foster a meaningful conversation. I will also be mindful of the other person's feelings as well as their thoughts and put my best effort into not interrupting them as they're speaking, but I will strive to be an attentive listener and always keep in mind that I represent Christ in everything that I do and say. Go to the next slide. Enlarging the conversation. So enlarging the conversation is providing an open line of communication in which both parties has the opportunity to have their opinions and their thoughts not only heard but seen. Stewart 2012 tells us that communicating is inhaling, which is receiving information, and exhaling, which is sending out information. Implementing methods that would help increase the benefits that come along with talking and listening. Next slide. As far as my background, I am 28 years old. I am an African American woman. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. I have never had a relationship with my biological father. I was a military brat growing up, so as a child I never stayed in one place too long. I am a mother of a 7-year-old little girl. I've been married for 4 months now. I have my bachelor's degree in sociology, and I'm working on my master's in human services, which is what this class is for. And I'm also an assistant cheerleading coach for a university here in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Next slide. So the outcome of my background. From being 28, I've learned over the years to communicate in a more effective way. As an African American woman, I put effort into not falling into certain stereotypes that people would expect from someone of my gender or race. With having 4 siblings, there was always someone to talk to growing up, so the communication was always there growing up as a child. With never having a relationship with my biological father, it made it hard for me to have a relationship with men and trust men and be able to have communication with men and believe that they were actually being honest in return. With being a military brat, when we moved around, I often pretended to be different people when we went to different places. So growing up, I never had a clear understanding of my identity or had a chance to really figure out who I was. So that didn't come until later on in life when I found Christ and I realized that my identity is found in Him. With being a mother of a 7-year-old, I've learned that communication in that situation is best when I explain as much as possible. There's never one detail that is too small for her. She seems to always want more information, and the more I give her, the better she is at completing tasks and things like that and understanding. So, in that aspect, I've learned to be as detailed as possible in my communication style. With the bachelor's degree in sociology, it's given me an interest in people watching. And what I mean by that is I will watch the way people interact with each other, nonverbal communication, and just look at how they speak, or maybe like hand gestures that they use when they speak, or just like body language when they speak, to try to get more information from the person without them actually speaking the information or verbally giving me that information. And then with being an assistant cheerleading coach, I have been doing this since 2009. So I often speak with a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of facial expressions because we teach the cheerleaders to do that, to communicate with people across the field or across the court what you're trying to say. So I often come off very excited, which can be great in situations as far as motivation, but it can also be negative in other situations when I am trying to be an empathetic listener and the person is expressing something that is not exciting. It's more of like a kind of bad situation or experience. I am working on that. Next slide. My behavioral blend. So I fall under a I, S, and D. And what this means is the behavioral blend falls under the DISC model. So D stands for people who are like very strong-willed and very independent, assertive personality types. Then there is the I personality type, who is like very energetic and outgoing and enthusiastic and persuasive and optimistic and creative. There's the C type. Those people are more data oriented and analytical, diplomatic, things of that nature. And then there is the S. And the S personality type is more of a caring, agreeable, supportive, dependable, calm, patient personality type. So with me falling under the I, that falls right in line with me being a cheerleading coach and being a cheerleader for all of my life. I am very energetic, very outgoing. I like to motivate people, and I have pride in the fact that I am very persuasive. I am in property management, and I talk people into a lot of things as far as housing. So I take pride in the fact that I have this I personality type. The next for me is S, as far as being caring and agreeable. I am very people oriented. I like to focus more on people than I focus on tasks. And then lastly is D, which is decisive, assertive, independent. And when I'm put in certain situations, I excel in that type of personality. I like having goals and being rewarded for those goals, as I will speak on in the next slide. So let's go to that. So my blend breakdown, I hit on this a little bit earlier in the prior slide, but I am mostly people focused. I like focusing more on people and making people happy rather than focusing on tasks and getting them completed. I feel that in the long run, the person is more important than the task. I also like fast-paced environments. It feels more energetic to me. Feels like there's more of like an energy there, and I feed off of that energy. I do focus on tasks, but only when there is a goal, some type of reward for completing that task. Then I'm very motivated to win and excel above whoever I'm competing with. I like to stand out in a crowd, which again goes hand in hand with the cheerleading. And that tends to make me more of a leader in most of the crowds that I interact with, and that also tends to make me more popular when I get in a group of people. And then I also need to feel a certain sense of freedom when I am in a job or in a work atmosphere. Just having the thought or just the feeling that I am free to make decisions, I work better in that type of atmosphere. Next slide. So I will identify some communication barriers that I've experienced, and the first one would be fast thinking. Stewart, 2012, tells us that the normal person talks 115 to 130 words per minute. However, the normal person listens or thinks about 500 words per minute, meaning that the listener has a lot of extra time to get sidetracked by whatever's going on around them or by their own thoughts. A solution to this would be, for me, to practice focused listening skills. And I would do this by aiming my posture towards the speaker. Also by making neutral and appropriate eye contact. And by moving responsively, and making responsive sounds so that they know I'm paying attention. That will keep me more in tune with the speaker and keep my thoughts from wandering off while they're speaking. All right. We will go to the next slide. Barrier number 2 that I identified is biased listening. I experience this a lot when I listen to people who I've had a lot of encounters with. With biased listening, I mean by this that we tend to form opinions about the level or the value of what will be said by the talker, depending on the experience or the past experience that we've had with the speaker. So a solution for this I have found for myself would be to identify words that are emotionally charged for me, or red flag words that I identify with in conversation, so that way when I do speak with people that I've had negative interactions with prior or anything of that nature, I will know those red flag words for me, and I will make sure I identify those and try not to be biased when they are speaking to me about certain situations. Next slide. Internal noise pollution. So when I'm talking about internal noise pollution, I'm talking about the things that could happen internally to keep the listener from being an active listener. Burley and Allen give us an example of these, and some of these things are the faker. The faker is someone who fakes paying attention, and they do this to just please the listener. To please the talker. So they're not actively listening, but they pretend or they fake like they are so that they can please whoever's speaking to them. Another type that Burley and Allen had identified is the dependent listener. The dependent listener is someone who is highly dependent and lives vicariously through the opinions, wishes, and feelings of others. So they are so concerned with how they come across as listening that they seem to miss what is being said. Then there is the interrupter, who I tend to be. The interrupter is someone who feels like they have to interject right then when they get a thought so that they don't forget that thought or forget what they're going to say to whoever's speaking to them. And I do this very often. And some solutions for this, as far as the interrupter, would just be to listen to what the speaker is saying, try to connect what your thought is with whatever they said, so that way you can remember it after they get done speaking. As far as the faker, a solution would be to actively listen, try to engage into what the speaker is saying, find like a common ground or something in there that interests you. And then a solution for the dependent listener would be to try not to miss what is being said, because in the end, remembering what's being said will be more appreciated over the way you listened if you weren't actually listening. Next slide. So there's external pollution as well that we experience when we have communication. And some external pollution would be things that may or may not be in the listener's control, but that we can probably still work on to try to help making our listening skills better. Some of these things would be the talker's mannerisms or appearance. I know that some people say I'm a lot, and I think I am maybe one of those people. But something like that, a filler that the talker gives in conversation, can be a distraction from some people as far as listening. There's also, if the talker is not speaking loud enough, that can be a distraction because the listener can't really hear anything that they're saying, so they tend to get distracted and pay attention to other things. Also, the room temperature. There's a lot of things that can distract you as far as being too hot, being too cold, and it just distracts your mind from listening and being an active listener. There's also like time pressure or deadlines that distracts the listener, that has them thinking, oh, we have to get this done, we have to speed this up, and it keeps them from active listening. Then there's also clock watching, when you have somewhere to go or you're on a time crunch and you're looking back and forth at the clock trying to see if it's almost time to go. Those are some things that can be some external pollution, and some solutions to those things would be making sure that there's enough time when the talker is talking so that the listener can be an active listener and that they do not rush or feeling that they have to rush the talker through the conversation. Also, just making sure that if you're in an environment, try to find an environment that has a comfortable setting as far as temperature goes and minimum distractions. Also, just when the speaker is speaking, make sure that they're talking loudly and projecting their voice enough so that they can be heard. And then also just try to keep in mind some mannerisms and your appearance when speaking to people so that you don't distract them with either of those. Next slide. So my action plan would be, because interpersonal communication won't improve without us actively working on it, I have set into place some things that I can work on as far as an action plan to improve my interpersonal communication. The first thing would be to stop interrupting. I will try to associate what the talker is saying with the information that is being said so that I can put those two together so that when they get done speaking, I can remember what I want to say and effectively communicate those after the speaker is done saying whatever needs to be said. I am going to also work on trying to share my feelings. Peterson 2007 refers to it as stomach talk, which is a language that puts feelings into words. I will try to more effectively share my feelings. I have a tendency to not share how I feel about things because I try to work through them internally without having to express them with other people. I will also work on sharing my thoughts, and Peterson 2007 also tells us that this is called head talk, which ultimately means to put our thoughts into words. Expressing thoughts without feelings tends to come off as accusing or kind of like judgmental or unattached. So we have to express our thoughts and our feelings at the same time so that we can come off as genuine as we speak. And I will work on this because I know that I cannot have effective communication without having both of my thoughts and feelings effectively communicated. And I know that this is going to take a while to work on, especially the interrupting and the being mindful and respectful of the other person speaking. So I come to the conclusion that over a period of time, I will assess my communication and just see if there are any visual signs of improvement by speaking and trying to make sure I get my feelings and express my thoughts effectively. I figure the best way to do this is to start with someone who's close to me, so I would start with my husband, making sure I express how I feel about situations and my thoughts about situations. And I feel that doing that would help me to be more comfortable when I express myself to other people, so that way I can gradually work into being able to express my feelings and thoughts effectively to people who I am meeting for the first time. Now, the next slide, we'll go on to that. So in summary, in this PowerPoint, I've just covered and identified my overreaching goal, or my OAG, for my life. I've defined enlarging the conversation. I've gave a description of my background as well as my behavioral blend and what's influenced my conversation, whether positive or negatively. I've defined the potential barriers that my interpersonal context, my interpersonal communication may come across, and I've told how I would like to deal with each one of those. I've also identified and provided solutions to noise pollution, whether they be internal or external, and I've also defined what my action plan would be. So on the next slide, which we'll go ahead and go to that, is just my bibliography, just giving my works cited, letting you know where I got all my information from. And I would just like to thank you for your time, and I hope that you were able to follow along with me and that I spoke and communicated myself effectively. Thank you. It's nice speaking with you. You have a good day.